She woke up early that morning as usual, before the sun had even started painting the sky with light. The small apartment was quiet, except for the faint hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of the old floorboards. She moved carefully, making herself a cup of tea, savoring the warmth in her hands. Life had never been easy, but she had learned to find small moments of peace amidst the struggles. Outside, the streets were slowly coming alive. People hurried by, some with tired faces, some with laughter that made her smile from afar. She had lived in this neighborhood for years, and she knew almost everyone. Some mornings she would see children running to catch the school bus, their backpacks bouncing with every step. Other mornings she would see people rushing to their jobs, faces fixed in concentration, lost in their own world. But that morning something unusual caught her attention. It was a small figure standing near the corner store. At first she thought it was just a child waiting for someone, but as she looked closer, a feeling of unease settled in her chest. The child looked around nervously, hugging themselves tightly as if trying to hide from the world. There were dark circles under the eyes, and the clothes seemed too big, worn, and dirty. There was something in the way the child held themselves, a quiet fear almost invisible to most people. But she could see it. She tried to shake off the feeling and continued her morning routine, but it kept coming back. She couldn't stop thinking about the child. Something told her that this was not just any child. There was a story behind those eyes, one that needed help. She tried to tell herself to mind her own business, to let the authorities handle things if needed, but her heart wouldn't let her. She knew she had to do something. Later that day, she saw the child again, walking along the street, head down, shoulders hunched. She approached slowly, keeping her voice soft and gentle.
"Hey there, are you okay?"
she asked. The child jumped slightly, startled, and looked up with wide, fearful eyes. "I'm fine," the child said quickly, almost too quickly before looking away. She could see the hesitation, the fear hiding behind the words. "It's okay," she said calmly. "I just want to make sure you're safe. Can I sit with you for a moment?" The child hesitated, then slowly nodded. She sat on the curb beside them, keeping a careful distance at first. She didn't want to scare the child further. She noticed bruises along the arms, faint but visible. Her heart ached. She had seen signs like this before, but she never thought she would come face to face with them so closely. "Do you want to tell me what happened?" she asked gently. The child shook their head. Tears welled up but didn't fall. I can't," they whispered. She nodded. "That's okay. You don't have to tell me everything right now. You just need to know that I'm here to help. You don't have to face anything alone." For a long moment they sat in silence. The sounds of the city surrounded them, cars passing, distant voices, footsteps on the pavement. But it felt like the world had stopped just for them. She offered her hand slowly, not pushing, just letting it hover. The child looked at it, then finally with a trembling hand took it. From that moment she knew her life would change. She couldn't leave the child out there, not when they were clearly in danger. She took them to a nearby cafe, bought them a small sandwich, and listened as the child ate quietly, eyes darting around the room, still cautious, still afraid. She didn't pressure them to speak, just offered comfort in her presence. Over the next few days, she tried to learn more. She asked gentle questions, offered small kindnesses, and slowly, very slowly, the child began to open up. The story they told was heartbreaking. They had been living with a relative who was supposed to care for them, but instead caused pain and fear every day. The home that should have been safe was a place of danger and neglect. The child spoke in broken sentences, tears occasionally spilling over, but she never rushed them. She just listened, offering warmth, patience, and understanding. She knew she had to take action. She contacted child services and reported the situation, making sure the authorities understood the urgency. She also made arrangements for temporary care, offering her own home as a safe place for the child while things were sorted out. The child was hesitant at first, scared of leaving what little familiarity they had, but eventually, the fear of danger outweighed the fear of the unknown. The first night at her apartment was quiet but tense. She gave the child their own small room, with clean sheets and a little blanket they could hold. She sat nearby, reading quietly, letting them adjust at their own pace. At one point, the child peeked out from behind the door, eyes wide. "Will you stay?" they asked. "Of course," she replied with a gentle smile. "I'm not going anywhere." Days turned into weeks. The child began to trust her more. They laughed at small jokes, asked questions about the world outside their previous life, and slowly, The shadows in their eyes began to fade. She took them to school, helped with homework, and even bought small treats just to see a genuine smile. Every little victory, every small sign of trust felt monumental. She often reflected on how fragile life could be, and how a single act of kindness could change everything. She didn't think about recognition or reward. She only thought about giving the child a chance at a normal, happy life. She knew that some people might not understand why she took such a risk, but she didn't care. Some things were bigger than fear or judgment. Some things were about saving a life. One evening, as they sat on the couch sharing a cup of cocoa, the child looked up at her and said softly, I think I can be happy now." Her heart swelled with emotion. "You deserve to be," she said, "and I'll be here to make sure you are." It wasn't easy. There were days filled with worry, nights when she lay awake wondering if she had done enough, if the child would truly be safe. But there were also moments of pure joy. Watching the child ride a bike for the first time without fear, seeing them smile freely, hearing them tell a story from school with pride. Every small step forward was a victory. She realized that life had given her a chance to make a difference in a way she hadn't anticipated. Helping this child wasn't just about protecting them. It was about showing them that kindness, patience, and love still existed in the world. It was about giving them hope, a chance to dream, and a place where they belonged. And in the quiet moments, when she watched the child sleep peacefully, she knew that whatever challenges came next, they had taken the first steps toward a better life. The bond they had formed was strong, unspoken but powerful. She felt a deep sense of responsibility, yes, but also a profound connection that neither time nor circumstance could break. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew one thing for certain. She would never abandon the child. She would fight for them, protect them, and love them in her quiet, steadfast way. And as she looked out the window at the stars beginning to shine in the darkening sky, she felt a sense of purpose, a warmth in her heart that no hardship could ever take away. Life was unpredictable, full of pain and hardship, but sometimes, just sometimes, it allowed a moment of grace, a chance to be a light in someone else's darkness. And that morning, when she had first noticed the small, frightened child on the street, she had no idea that this single act of noticing, of caring, would change both their lives forever. Days turned into weeks and weeks into months. The little apartment that had once felt quiet and lonely now carried a gentle rhythm of life. The child, though still cautious, began to settle into this new environment. Slowly, very slowly, the fear that had weighed so heavily on them started to lift, replaced by small moments of trust and even happiness. Every morning, she would wake up early as usual and make breakfast. She always left a plate for the child, gently calling them to the table with a smile. At first, the child would come reluctantly, eyes downcast, afraid of doing something wrong. But she never scolded or pressured them. She would simply smile, ask about their day, or talk about little things she noticed outside her window. A bird perched on a branch, a neighbor watering flowers, the sunlight creeping through the leaves. Gradually, the child began to join in the conversation, timidly at first, then with growing confidence. School was a new world for the child, one that was both exciting and frightening. The first day was the hardest. They clung to her hand tightly, unsure of what to expect. "You'll be okay," she whispered, squeezing their hand. "I'll be right here when school ends." The classroom was bright and full of voices. Children laughed and played, some making friends easily, others sitting alone. Her child was quiet at first, keeping to themselves, watching, observing, trying to understand how this new world worked. She stayed close, watching from the doorway until the teacher waved and assured her that everything would be fine. She had to leave eventually, but she made sure the child knew she would return. Over time, the child began to open up. They made a friend, a gentle classmate who seemed to notice the small cues of sadness and fear. She noticed the changes at home, too. The child started to laugh more, even on days when school had been hard. She watched them carefully, noticing every small milestone, learning to tie shoelaces, finishing homework on their own, sharing stories from school without fear of judgment. One evening, as they were sitting together after dinner, the child asked a question that made her heart ache with both sadness and hope. "Why did no one help me before?" they whispered. She held their hand and shook her head gently. "Sometimes people don't see what's happening. Some people don't know how to help. But you have to remember it's not your fault. None of it is your fault. And now you're safe. Tears filled the child's eyes, but they let them fall freely this time without hiding. She wrapped her arms around them, offering comfort without words. It was a small, quiet moment, but it was powerful. It marked the beginning of healing, not just from the past, but from years of fear and uncertainty. She also helped the child face challenges that went beyond physical safety. The child had learned to hide their feelings, to stay quiet even when something hurt. She encouraged them to express themselves, to speak about their emotions, even if it was just a word or two at first. She introduced small routines that helped build confidence: drawing, reading aloud, keeping a journal of thoughts and dreams. These were tiny seeds, but they grew slowly, shaping the child's sense of self and trust in the world. There were setbacks, too. Some days the child would refuse to eat, hide in their room, or retreat to silence. She never forced them. She would sit quietly outside the door, sometimes talking softly, sometimes just letting them know she was there. Patience became her greatest tool. She learned that healing couldn't be rushed, that trust had to be earned with consistent love and care. Outside the walls of the apartment, life continued with its usual struggles. She still worked long hours, managing bills, responsibilities, and the small community she cared about. Yet somehow she always found time for the child. On weekends, they would take small trips to the park, feed the ducks at the pond, or simply walk along the streets, observing the world together. The child began to see beauty where before there had been only fear. Flowers blooming along the sidewalk, the sound of laughter in the distance, the warmth of the sun on their face. One particularly cold morning, the child refused to go to school. Trembling not from the cold but from anxiety, she knelt in front of them, holding their hands gently. "I know it feels scary, but you can do this. You're stronger than you think," she said. Slowly, the child nodded, and together they walked to school. She stayed until they were inside the classroom, then left with a hopeful heart. By the end of the day, the child had returned home with a smile, having faced the fear and survived it. The bond between them deepened with each passing day. It was no longer just about safety or shelter, it became about love, guidance, and trust. She learned to read the child's moods, noticing subtle signs of happiness or distress. The child learned that they could rely on someone, that someone would listen without judgment, that someone would protect them no matter what. It was a relationship built on quiet consistency, not grand gestures. She also made sure the child had access to resources that could help with healing. Therapy sessions, school support programs, and even simple life skills like cooking or budgeting were introduced gradually. The child, who had once been withdrawn and fearful, began to gain confidence. They learned that they could make decisions, that their voice mattered, and that they could dream of a life beyond survival. Every achievement, no matter how small, was celebrated. The first time the child rode a bike without training wheels, she clapped and cheered, feeling a mixture of pride and relief. The first time they brought home a good grade, she praised the effort rather than the result, teaching them the value of perseverance. Slowly, the child began to believe in themselves, a belief that had been absent for far too long. Evenings often became moments of quiet reflection. They would sit together, sipping cocoa or reading stories aloud. The child asked questions about the world, why the sky was blue, how birds flew, why people sometimes hurt each other. She answered honestly, in a way that was gentle and comforting, never shying away from the truth but always framing it with hope and understanding. One rainy afternoon, as they watched drops race down the window, the child asked something that surprised her. "Do you think someone could ever love me like this?" She looked at them, her eyes soft. "Yes," she said firmly. "Someone can love you like this, and they will. But even more importantly, you will learn to love yourself. That's the most powerful love of all." The child didn't answer immediately but leaned against her shoulder, taking comfort in her words. That day the rain outside seemed less dreary, almost as if the world itself was noticing the small miracle unfolding in the apartment. Time continued its steady march. The child grew stronger, healthier, and more confident. Their laughter became more frequent, their steps more assured, and their curiosity about the world insatiable. She watched with quiet pride, marveling at the resilience of the human spirit. She knew that the scars of the past might never completely disappear, but they were fading, replaced by hope and possibility. She also realized something profound. In helping the child, she herself had grown. Her capacity for patience, empathy, and love had expanded in ways she never imagined. She understood more deeply the fragile beauty of life, the ways in which a single act of kindness could ripple outward, changing not just one life but many. Friends and neighbors began to notice the change in the child. Teachers commented on their growing confidence. Classmates noticed their friendliness, and even casual observers could see the light returning to their eyes. She took no credit for these changes, knowing that the child's own strength was at the heart of it all. Her role was to guide, to support, and to protect. And through it all, the child never forgot the small apartment, the quiet mornings with tea, the evenings filled with stories and laughter, and the gentle, unwavering presence of someone who believed in them when the world had not. That belief became the foundation on which the child would build the rest of their life, a life filled with hope, courage, and the knowledge that they were never truly alone. As another day came to a close, she looked at the child, now peacefully reading in their small room, and felt a quiet satisfaction. The journey of healing was far from over, but they had made it this far together. Every step forward was a victory, every smile a testament to the power of love and kindness, and she knew in the depths of her heart that this was just the beginning of a life that would be brighter than either of them had ever imagined. Years passed, and life continued to flow with its usual mix of challenges and small joys. The child who was once fragile and fearful had grown into a confident young adult. The woman watched with quiet pride as they navigated the world with courage and determination. The bond they had formed over the years remained strong, but now it had evolved into something deeper, mutual respect, understanding, and a sense of family that went beyond words. School had become a place of growth and opportunity. The young adult excelled in subjects that once seemed impossible, driven by a curiosity and determination that she had nurtured. Teachers noticed the change and often commented on the child's resilience and focus. The young adult had learned to believe in themselves, a belief that had been absent for far too long. The woman had provided guidance, yes, but it was their own effort and courage that shone through. Outside of school, life was full of new experiences. They joined clubs, participated in community projects, and made friends who admired their strength and kindness. Yet, despite the growing independence, they still turned to her for advice, for comfort, and for reassurance. She had become more than a guardian. She was a mentor, a guide, and a constant presence in their life. There were moments when the young adults struggled, moments when the past threatened to pull them back. Memories of fear, neglect, and pain would sometimes surface unexpectedly, leaving them anxious or withdrawn. She handled these moments with patience and care, never dismissing their feelings, never rushing the healing process. She knew that growth was not linear, and that setbacks were a natural part of life. One evening, as they sat together on the small balcony of the apartment, the young adult spoke quietly. "I sometimes wonder what my life would have been like if you hadn't helped me," they said, eyes fixed on the horizon. She smiled gently, feeling a lump in her throat. "I don't know," she admitted, "but I do know that you are strong and you've come so far. You've taken the pain and turned it into strength. That's something no one can ever take away from you." The young adult nodded, absorbing the words. There was a silence, comfortable and full of unspoken understanding. In that quiet moment, they both recognized how far they had come, how much they had grown together, and how the bond between them had shaped the path forward. As the years continued, the young adult prepared for the next stage of life. College applications, job opportunities, and dreams of independence filled their days. She helped in practical ways, proofreading essays, offering guidance on applications, and giving advice about handling new responsibilities. She also offered emotional support, reminding them to trust themselves and believe in their abilities. The day came when they received the acceptance letter from a college they had worked so hard to reach. Tears filled her eyes as she read it aloud, and the young adult hugged her tightly, overwhelmed with excitement and gratitude. "I couldn't have done this without you," they whispered. "You did this yourself," she replied softly. "I only helped you believe it was possible. The rest was all you." Moving day was bittersweet. She helped pack boxes, arrange transportation, and offered every piece of advice she could think of. The young adult was eager for the future, but leaving home was difficult. They had grown up in her care, and the apartment that had once been a temporary refuge had become a place of love and stability. Saying goodbye, even temporarily, was emotional for both of them. The young adult promised to stay in touch, calling and texting regularly, sharing their experiences, and seeking guidance when needed. She listened to every story, celebrated every success, and offered support through every challenge. Though the apartment felt quieter without them, she found comfort in knowing they were thriving, making the most of the opportunities they had fought so hard to achieve. During this period, she also reflected on her own life. Helping the child had changed her in profound ways. She had grown more patient, more empathetic, and more aware of the struggles that many people faced silently. She became more involved in her community, offering support to others in need, inspired by the difference she had made in one life. She realized that the small acts of kindness she had offered had ripple effects, creating change far beyond what she could immediately see. Occasionally, she would visit the young adult at college or meet them in the city. These visits were filled with laughter, storytelling, and quiet moments of reflection. She marveled at the person they had become, strong, kind, and determined. She also noticed how they never forgot their roots, how they carried the lessons and love she had given them into the world. Even as life moved forward, the past remained a part of them. They remembered the fear, the loneliness, and the pain that had once dominated their life. But those memories no longer controlled them. They were markers of resilience, proof of how far they had come. She often reminded them of this, helping them see that the journey had made them stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. The young adult began to dream bigger, inspired by the opportunities that lay ahead. They talked about careers that could make a difference, ways to help others, and the desire to give back to the community that had shaped them. She encouraged these dreams, offering advice and guidance, but always letting them lead the way. She knew that true growth came from self-discovery and personal effort, not from being guided too tightly. There were also moments of joy that felt almost magical in their simplicity. A shared cup of coffee in the morning, a walk through a park in autumn, a quiet evening spent watching the stars. These were the moments that strengthened their bond. They were reminders that life, even after hardship, could be filled with warmth, love, and connection. She often reflected on the unpredictability of life. She had never expected to become a guardian, mentor, and guide, but she embraced the role fully. She understood that sometimes, circumstances place people in positions where their actions can have profound effects, and she accepted that responsibility with humility and grace. As the young adult prepared to step fully into the world on their own, she felt a mix of pride and longing. Pride for the person they had become, and longing for the days when they were small, fragile, and entirely dependent on her care. Yet she knew that this was the natural course of life, the nurturing phase leading to independence, trust, and self-reliance. Even in their absence, their presence was felt in small ways. They called often, sharing experiences, asking for advice, and expressing gratitude. She cherished these conversations, knowing that the bond they had built was unbreakable, strengthened by years of shared experiences, love, and care. During this time, she also reflected on the lessons of patience, empathy, and resilience. She had learned that true impact is often invisible at first, like a seed buried in the soil, waiting to grow. The growth might take years, but when it blooms, it can change lives in ways unimaginable. She realized that the love she had given was not just for the child's benefit. It had shaped her life too, making her stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. As the young adult reached the final year of college, they had transformed into a confident, capable, and kind individual. They carried the lessons she had imparted, the love she had offered, and the resilience they had built through hardship. The woman watched from afar, her heart swelling with pride, knowing that her guidance had helped create a life full of potential, hope, and promise. Yet she also knew that life was far from over. The story was still unfolding, with challenges and triumphs yet to come. She trusted that the young adult was ready to face them, armed with the strength and wisdom nurtured over years of care and support. She remained a steady presence, always available, always supportive, ready to guide when needed, but allowing space for independence. In quiet moments, she would reflect on the journey they had shared, the fear, the healing, the growth, and the triumphs. She understood deeply that every small act of kindness, every moment of patience, every word of encouragement had contributed to a life transformed. The ripple effect of love and care, she realized, could not be measured but was powerful beyond imagination. And as she looked ahead, she felt a quiet anticipation, knowing that the bond they shared would continue to shape their lives in ways neither could yet imagine. The child she had once rescued had grown into a remarkable young adult, and though the future was uncertain, she had faith that they would navigate it with strength, courage, and the knowledge that they were never truly alone. Years passed and life continued its steady rhythm. The young adult had grown into a confident, independent individual, navigating the world with determination and courage. They had moved far from the small apartment where their life had changed so dramatically, building a future full of possibilities. Yet despite the distance and the busyness of life, they never forgot the woman who had saved them, nurtured them, and believed in them when the world had not. It was a crisp morning when the young adult decided it was time to return. They had spent years working hard, building their career, gaining stability, and learning the ways of the world. But no matter how far they had gone, there was a sense of unfinished business, a need to express gratitude to the person who had changed their life so profoundly. They arrived in the neighborhood quietly, walking the familiar streets with a mix of nostalgia and anticipation. The small apartment building looked the same, though a few details had changed with time. The trees lining the street had grown taller, and the corner store had new signs, but the essence of the place remained. Every step brought back memories, the early days of fear, the quiet evenings of laughter and storytelling, the moments of care and guidance that had shaped their life. They stood outside the apartment for a moment, unsure of how to start. Their heart pounded with nervous excitement. It had been so many years, and yet the bond they shared felt alive, unbroken. Taking a deep breath, they lifted their hand and knocked on the door. The woman opened it, surprised to see someone standing there, tall and composed, yet with a familiar warmth in their eyes. "Hello," the young adult said softly. "Do you remember me?" For a moment, she studied the face before her. Something in the eyes, the way they held themselves, the quiet strength. It stirred a memory that had been with her for years. And then slowly recognition dawned. "It's you," she whispered, a mix of shock and joy filling her voice. Tears welled up in her eyes as they stepped inside. She looked at the young adult, now grown, confident and full of life, and felt an overwhelming surge of emotion. "I can't believe it's really you," she said. You look so different, but I can see you. I see the same person I helped all those years ago." The young adult smiled, a mixture of happiness and relief. "I came to thank you," they said quietly. "I needed to see you, to tell you how much you changed my life. I wouldn't be who I am today without you." They sat together in the living room, the same space that had once been filled with quiet moments of fear and trust. Now it was filled with laughter, warmth, and stories of the years that had passed. The young adult shared their journey, the struggles, the successes, the moments of doubt, and the triumphs that had followed. She listened intently, her heart swelling with pride and humility, realizing that the child she had saved had grown into a remarkable person. "I remember the first time you held my hand," the young adult said, voice soft. "I was so scared, and you made me feel safe. That one moment, it changed everything for me. You gave me hope when I had none." She shook her head, tears running freely now. "I only did what I thought was right," she said. "I couldn't leave you out there. But hearing you say that, it means more than I can ever explain." The conversation continued, filled with shared memories, laughter, and tears. They talked about the small apartment, the evenings spent reading stories, the walks in the park, the first day of school, the struggles and the victories. Every memory was a testament to the bond they had formed, a bond that had endured time and distance. After hours of talking, the young adult grew serious. "I also came because I want to repay you," they said. "Not just with words, but with actions. You gave me a life, and I want to make sure you know how much that means to me." She looked at them, startled. "You don't have to," she said gently. "I never helped you for anything in return. Seeing you grow, seeing you live your life, that's enough for me." "I know," the young adult replied, "but I want to do this. You've given me more than anyone could ever imagine. I want to give something back, in a way that honors what you've done for me." Over the next days, they discussed ways to make an impact. The young adult had worked hard, and now had the means to offer support in meaningful ways. They spoke of creating opportunities for others in the neighborhood, helping children who were struggling, supporting community projects, and providing resources for families in need. The woman listened, touched by the thoughtfulness and humility behind the gestures. Yet the young adult emphasized something even more important. I want people to know that kindness matters, they said. That one act of compassion can change a life completely. I want to honor what you did for me, so that others can see how powerful it is to care for someone even when it's hard. She nodded, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. That's the greatest gift anyone could give, she said, to carry the lessons forward, to make the world better because of love and care. In the following days, they began implementing small projects together. They helped renovate a local community center, organized support for children in the neighborhood, and even started a small mentorship program. The young adult's experience and resources, combined with her wisdom and guidance, created a ripple effect that touched countless lives. Through all this, the bond between them deepened even further. It was no longer simply about rescue or guidance, it was a partnership, a shared mission born from love, gratitude, and shared experience. They laughed, they worked, they reflected, and they celebrated every achievement, no matter how small. One evening, after a long day of organizing and helping, they sat together on the small balcony of the apartment. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the streets they had once walked together. The young adult turned to her, eyes filled with emotion. I wanted to do more than just survive, they said. I wanted to live fully, and now I want to help others do the same. All of this, it started with you. She reached out and took their hand, feeling the warmth and strength that had grown over the years. I am so proud of you, she said. You've taken everything that life gave you, the pain, the struggle, the fear, and turned it into something beautiful. I couldn't have hoped for more. Tears flowed freely, mingling with laughter. They both understood the profound impact of their shared journey, the way a single act of compassion had transformed a life, and in turn, how that life could now touch countless others. That night, as they sat together in quiet reflection, the woman realized something she had always known but now felt more deeply than ever. The true power of kindness is not in recognition, not in reward, but in its ability to change lives in ways that endure far beyond the moment. The young adult had returned not only to repay her, but to continue the cycle of love, care, and compassion, ensuring that what had been given to them would be given to others. And as the stars twinkled in the night sky, they both felt a sense of completion, fulfillment, and hope. The journey had come full circle, yet it was only the beginning of a new chapter, a chapter where love, kindness, and gratitude would continue to ripple outward, touching lives in ways neither of them could yet imagine. After the young adult returned and the initial reunion passed, life settled into a new rhythm, but it was different from before. There was a sense of purpose, a shared mission that both of them felt deeply. The young adult had come not only to say thank you, but to repay the kindness that had changed their life so profoundly. And she, the woman who had once rescued a frightened child, now felt a quiet fulfillment knowing that her small acts of compassion had created ripples far beyond what she could have imagined. The first step was personal. The young adult wanted to make sure that she felt secure, comfortable, and valued. They noticed how she had quietly managed her life, working tirelessly, often putting others first while her own needs were small. You've done so much for others, the young adult said one morning. Now let me help you. Let me make life easier for you in some way. At first she resisted, as she always had when it came to accepting help. She had learned to manage, to rely on herself, and asking for assistance had never felt natural. But the young adult was patient, gentle, and insistent in the kindest way. They helped with bills, organized tasks that had become burdensome, and ensured that she had everything she needed for a comfortable life. Every small act of assistance was a gesture of gratitude, a tangible way to honor her years of selfless care. Beyond personal help, the young adult also wanted to create opportunities for her to fulfill dreams she had put aside. She had always spoken quietly of the things she wanted to do. Maybe start a small business, support local children, or help the neighborhood grow. Together, they planned ways to bring those dreams to life. They renovated a small community center nearby, creating a space where children could learn, play, and feel safe. The young adult invested resources, but the ideas and vision came from her, making her feel both empowered and appreciated. The impact of these actions rippled quickly. Children in the neighborhood who had once wandered streets unsupervised now had a safe place to explore, learn, and grow. Families had access to programs that provided support, guidance, and education. The small apartment and community that had once been a quiet backdrop to her life were now bustling with energy, laughter, and hope. And in every step, the young adult made it clear that none of this was charity. They wanted her to see the fruit of her own efforts magnified through their partnership. The young adult also took steps to honor her personally. They arranged small surprises, dinners, outings, and gifts that reflected her tastes and interests. But it wasn't the material gestures that mattered most. It was the acknowledgement, the love, and the recognition that her life's work, her small acts of courage, had not gone unnoticed. They made sure she felt seen, celebrated, and deeply appreciated. One afternoon, they sat together in the newly renovated community center. Children played around them, laughter echoing through the bright, colorful room. The young adult turned to her, eyes full of emotion. "Do you see this?" they asked. "All of this, it's because of you. Because you believed in me when no one else did. Because you gave me a chance, a safe place, love, and guidance. I wanted to give this back to you." She looked around, her heart swelling. The walls, once blank and quiet, now carried the energy of life, hope, and growth. She realized that what she had started with one frightened child had now become a foundation for countless children to thrive. She turned to the young adult, tears in her eyes. "I never imagined this," she said softly. "I only wanted to help you. I didn't think it would grow into something like this." The young adult shook their head. "You planted a seed," they said, "and now it's grown into something bigger than either of us could have imagined. This is your legacy. You changed a life, and that life is changing many more. You deserve to see it, to feel it, to know the power of what you've done." She felt a profound sense of fulfillment. It wasn't just about gratitude. It was about seeing her impact amplified, about knowing that love and kindness could truly change the world. She realized that every sleepless night, every small act of courage, every moment she had spent patiently caring for the child had mattered. It had mattered in ways that reached far beyond her apartment, her neighborhood, or her own life. Over the next weeks, they worked together on various projects. They organized educational programs, mentoring for at-risk youth, and community events that brought people together. The young adult brought energy, organization, and resources, while she brought wisdom, guidance, and the heart that had nurtured them years ago. They balanced each other perfectly, creating a powerful partnership grounded in love, gratitude, and shared purpose. Even with all the new responsibilities and activities, they always made time for quiet moments. Some evenings were spent sitting on the balcony, sharing stories and memories, drinking tea, and simply enjoying each other's company. These moments were reminders that despite everything, the foundation of their relationship remained love, trust, and the deep bond formed through years of care. The young adult often reflected on their journey, thinking about the scared, lonely child who had once clung to her hand for safety. They marveled at how far they had come, not just because of their own effort, but because someone had believed in them when the world had not. They understood deeply the power of a single act of kindness. It had given them life, hope, and purpose. And now it was giving back to her, shaping the lives of countless others. One evening, as the sun set over the neighborhood, they sat together quietly. "I wanted to make sure you knew how much you mean to me," the young adult said softly. "Not just for what you did in the past, but for who you are. You are kind, strong, patient, and brave. You changed my life, and now you are changing the lives of so many others."